Thank you. Welcome to Expert Views on ADR Ever, a podcast about simplifying the traditional African method of settling disputes or the appropriate dispute resolution ADR in a bid to attract more users to settle their disputes or conflicts with mediation, ombuds, collaborative law, arbitration, restorative justice, early dispute resolution, negotiation, conciliation, and of course, early neutral evaluation. My name is DrChinweEgbunike, the marketing liaison of Ombuds Day 2024 American Bar Association Dispute Resolution and the host of Expert Views on ADR Ever video podcast show. I'm delighted to welcome Ryan Smith. He is the Assistant University Ombudsperson at the Michigan State University. He is also the co-chair of the Ombuds Committee, American Bar Association section of Dispute Resolution, and the co-chair of the Ombuds Day Subcommittee 2024. He wears many hats, so I've left the link to his profile. Welcome to the show, Ryan. Let me stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's such an honor having you. So without further ado, the first question is, what is Ombuds and its role in dispute resolution?
Yeah, so basically there are a few different types of ombuds, and you see this in the United States and then you see this globally too. So some that folks commonly know, there's one that's called a parliamentary ombuds or classical ombuds or ombudsmen. And these are individuals in government that can kind of receive complaints and concerns from citizens, and so oftentimes these types of ombuds are empowered to conduct formal investigations. They can make recommendations and things like that. In the United States, and I think something that's growing internationally pretty quickly, is this idea of the organizational ombuds. This is the practice that I am in. Somebody within an organization or a university or sometimes a corporation who can work with folks who are interacting in this space. And so in my role, for example, I work with students, sometimes faculty and staff if they're having student-related issues that are coming in to share what's going on, and then we can explore options for resolution together and help individuals navigate complex systems and structures and engage in conflict resolution. There's also a type of ombuds in the United States, especially called it's called a long-term care ombuds. And so some people would typify this as something that's an advocate ombuds. And so these are folks who are in long-term care facilities. Advocate ombuds will also work with children, sometimes prison population. So situations where there's a really significant power dynamic and power imbalance, to help if folks in these situations have issues, needs that aren't being addressed, they can typically go to these ombuds who will help them find resolution, maybe in more of that advocacy role.
Oh, okay. Thank you so very much. So what I hear you say, it's an informal process.
Yeah, for an organizational ombuds especially, yes. So the organizational ombuds is really classified by these 4 standards of practice: confidentiality, neutrality, independence, and informality. If you're looking at a parliamentary type ombuds, which I'm not, and I can't really probably speak as fluently to that, it can be more of a formal process, but the organizational model is very informal.
Okay, thank you so very much for the clarification. So is there any history associated with ombuds in the United States?
Yeah, so really the first ombuds in the United States, you see them in the mid-1960s. And the first ombuds in the United States were actually governmental ombuds. So the state of New York, I think a county in New York had an ombuds, and the state of Hawaii had an ombuds in, I want to say 1966, around there somewhere. This then shifted into institutions of higher education. So you saw the first university ombuds in the late 1960s. Here where I am at Michigan State University, we're actually the longest standing college or university ombuds in the country. So we've been in existence since 1967 is when the first ombuds came on. So there is, I guess, depending on how you look at it, I think a relatively long history. Since that time, it's really progressed and evolved and I think it's become more professional. Standards have been incorporated. The International Ombuds Association, which is the professional association that works with a lot of organizational ombuds in the United States and globally, has really, really grown and expanded. And then these other types of ombuds that I've also talked about, the governmental ombuds, the long-term care, the advocate ombuds, I think that these roles have expanded pretty significantly as well.
Okay, thank you so very much for your insights. I know that the Ombuds Day is around the corner, so can you sort of summarize what Ombuds Day is and what has its impact been so far? Thank you.
Yeah. So the first Ombuds Day was actually, Ombuds Day was created in 2018 through an ABA resolution. And basically what it is, the way I explain it, is a celebration and a recognition of ombuds broadly. And so it includes, and we really make effort to include all types of ombuds. So the subcommittee includes representation from the organizational ombud sector. It includes representation from the governmental ombud sector, federal ombuds, long-term care ombuds. And I really like it because it's one of the few spaces where all these folks can come together under this bigger ombuds umbrella to celebrate the shared history and to celebrate a lot of the commonalities in terms of what we do. So I think that there is I get a lot of folks saying, well, is it a conference? Is it what is it? It's really not. It's not a conference. I think there's been talk of, maybe someday having a conference, but I think at this point, that's not what it is. We provide resources. We provide a theme where these individual organizations, but also individual offices can take it and roll with it and celebrate their role and their mission and work with their own constituents or visitors or populations that they're connecting with to kind of make themselves known and have those connections.
Okay, thank you so very much. So let's take it back to the last year's Ombuds Day. Can you elaborate on the proclamation gotten from the 34 states and also the team for last year's?
Last year, yeah. Last year,
and also the team for this year. Sorry, thank you.
Sure, yeah. Well, last year's theme was diverse, enroll, united in service.
Yeah.
And I think that theme was great because it highlighted the diversity within the ombuds community. It also highlighted diversity in practice, so we could recognize these differences, but also the similarities in terms of governmental ombuds and organizational ombuds and long-term care ombuds. I was really also excited because last year I feel like we really branched outside of the United States in a different way. I think Ombuds Day at this point is something that is celebrated and recognized globally. A lot of other organizations in Europe and Africa, the UK, Canada really programmed to the theme and really programmed to Ombuds Day, which I think was really exciting. And I think that was one of our big goals last year. Yeah. As a part of Ombuds Day, I think talking about the proclamations, we worked with, this has been happening for the last couple of years, and every year we've gotten more and more proclamations. But ombuds across the United States work with their state governments to request proclamations. Typically it's from the governor of a state. Mm-hmm. These proclamations tend to be ceremonial, so they're not binding or anything like that. But it's where the state and where the governor of a state is proclaiming, last year's date and then this year's date, hopefully, to be Ombuds Day. And so it does help with that spreading awareness of the profession, recognizing the importance of the profession in these states and in these communities. So yeah, last year we had 34 state proclamations. You can see the list of them on the website ombudsday.com. Yeah. And this year we're hoping for even more.
Fingers crossed. Thank you so very much, Ryan, for that. So how can one become an ombudsman or an ombudsperson?
Well, the interesting thing about ombuds is that you get ombuds from all walks of life. I know ombuds who are attorneys, I know ombuds who are social workers, I know ombuds who are psychologists, I know ombuds who come from other spaces. And so, for example, my role, I work at a university in the United States, and so my career up to this point primarily has been spent working in higher education, and I have a doctorate in higher education, and so that's an area, a space where I know well. I know higher education, and I can work to navigate these systems. And so you get some folks who come from that space, but I don't know that there's one singular path. I think what I would tell somebody first, if they're wanting to become an ombuds, I guess specifically an organizational ombuds, is to think about, what's your background and what do you want to do? What sort of field do you want to focus on? I think that there are a lot of great training programs for ombuds, and so I see more and more folks coming into it with a background in dispute resolution. There are a lot of master's programs in dispute resolution where I think people will start, but I don't think it has to be dispute resolution either. I think just any kind of education and training that's appropriate is helpful. And then also, for example, the International Ombuds Association has a training that they offer called Foundations. And so a lot of folks, I think Foundations is a great start for people to kind of get this background, to understand what an ombuds is, to understand what an organizational ombuds is, and some of those parameters in a pretty intense way. So I think Foundations, kind of seeking out these trainings is another good place to start for folks seeking these types of roles.
Okay, thank you so very much. So how can one join the ABA Ombuds Committee?
Yeah, so to join the Ombuds Committee, first you have to join the American Bar Association, and then join the section of dispute resolution. So within the section of dispute resolution, there are a number of committees. Ombuds is one of those. And so if you join them, you can join the Ombuds Committee. We meet monthly, and we will talk about different topics. We'll invite speakers to kind of come in and share about different topics. And so it's a really engaging and dynamic group. I know you didn't ask, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Ombuds Committee, because we're also engaged really interesting work. So Ombuds Day is one of them. Like this, the Ombuds Committee really leads those efforts in a collaborative way with these other organizations. There's also a legislative task force that's looking at, creating a model act and legislation around ombuds and examining that in this really interesting way. There was a resolution that came through the section, or came from the ABA, started in the section of dispute resolution, about early dispute resolution, early intervention, and including ombuds in that. And so I think we're really doing really interesting things on the personal level, the developmental level, but then also the bigger picture, making significant structural changes that make the work of ombuds and highlight the importance of the ombuds role.
Okay, thank you so very much. I want to ask a final question. When you compare the cost of litigation to going to the Ombudsperson, which is much cheaper? Is it litigation or ombuds?
Ombuds, absolutely. I think, and there's been research done in this space, which I don't have in front of me at the moment, but organizations, if you're having to litigate issues, that could potentially have been prevented or identified and resolved early on through an ombuds, I think the role of the ombuds could be much cheaper than litigation in these spaces. Absolutely. So that's, I think, one of the best arguments for having an ombuds within an organization.
Yeah. How about time as well? Sorry? Time.
The time.
Time. Does it save time?
It does save time. I think that there's been other research done into this space as well, where they say, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but a percentage of a manager's time is spent working through conflicts among employees. And so I think managers, CEOs, high-level executives would much rather, I think the incorporation of an ombuds allows somebody with expertise in conflict and dispute resolution to help an organization at an organizational level to resolve conflicts, but then also to help resolve some of these interpersonal conflicts. I think providing that resource to employees or other folks who could potentially utilize an ombuds service is going to free up the time of management to be doing other things as well.
Thank you so very much, Ryan. This is a masterclass. Thank you for your perspectives, insights, and the learning you've shared with us. And I believe that more people, potential users, would embrace all you have stated here, in particularly the benefits associated with ombuds and, settle their disputes via ombuds or through an ombuds person whenever the need arises. Thank you so very much, and all the best in the coming Ombuds Day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Ombuds Day is October 10th of this year. October 10th, 2024. So mark your calendars and look for information on social media, on LinkedIn and ombudsday.com.
Oh, sorry. Thank you so very much for mentioning that. Totally forgot. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for all the work you've done so far, Ryan.
Thank you.
Well
Thanks
done.
for having me.
Cheers. Thank you.